Good morning, everyone. Let's please stand for a moment of silence and the pledge. And now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call our meeting to order today. First order of business, approval of minutes, June 22nd, 2020. Commissioners, any comments, changes, or a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second? Second. First and a second. All in favor say aye.
I wasn't here, Jeff, so.
Okay, thank you. Aye. Passes 3-0, 1 extension. Thank you. We will now begin with Commissioner reports. Vice President Baker.
Just hope everybody's staying cool in the hot weather and do the right things. And if something doesn't feel right, get back inside and getting cool. So hope everyone has a great day and a great week.
Thank you. Commissioner Schmidt.
Just a real quick thank you to the Hancock EMS station and the emergency room at the hospital. They picked my mom up at mile marker 70 on mile marker 7 on 70 on Sunday. She's completely fine, everybody did a great job, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Wagner.
Morning. I don't really have anything. I got a letter, a letter from Lynn Rushing, Brook Lane. He's asking for us just to support or pledge no financial burden to the county. They're the only hospital in the state of Maryland that has a well for water. And they're applying to Rural Maryland Prosperity Investment Fund for some financial assistance for that and a couple other items. He just wanted to know if we would sign a letter of support that, they've been here 70 years, Brook Lane. So I just asked the commissioners if they'd agree with that, and we get a letter of support out to endorsement for him to help apply for this investment fund prosperity grant.
Yeah, 2 grants,
Okay.
one for transportation resources and one for well and plumbing upgrades.
Yeah.
Thank you. And no comments from me this morning. I'd like to proceed to staff.
I'm sorry, there's a consensus on behalf of the board to send both letters.
Thank you. Thank you for the correction. Staff comments. Come forward, introduce yourself in the matter.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Susan Small, Director of Business Development. I just have a really brief and exciting announcement for you. Our local business here, Hub Labels, has worked on a new marketing campaign with the State Department of Commerce. They will be donating lots and lots of boxes of a sticker that's going to go, it's actually a window cling, that's going to go out to all of the economic development organizations around the state. Everybody's going to get some of these to distribute to our businesses, basically saying they're proud to be safely open. So we probably will not get these for another week or 2, but I just wanted to announce that it is a Washington County business that has generously donated to this marketing effort across the state. They're showing the label up there for everyone to see. So we're going to distribute with our partners in economic development around the community. So just want to say thank you to Hub Labels, give them a shout out as Washington County's proud to have them here and to be doing that. So
Very good.
That's it.
Special note of thanks to Hub Labels from the
Yes.
committee.
Yeah, when we toured the Hub Labels, that was a well-run oiled machine out there.
yeah,
And I
they have an
appreciate
amazing
them.
operation.
Yeah.
Yep. So thank you.
Any other staff comments? Okay, seeing none from the gallery. Krista?
I have the Board of Zoning Appeals requesting a reappointment of Mr. John Cohill to serve his second full 3-year term from July 1st, 2020 through June 30th of 2023. And this will be a second term. This is a paid board.
Commissioners, okay with that reappointment?
It's fine.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve John Cahill's reappointment to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Second.
Okay, first and second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 4-0. Krista, anything else? Mr. Downey?
No comments this morning, any interest?
Thank you. Next, we'll convene as Board of Health. I believe I need a motion to do that. Is there a motion to convene?
Make the motion to convene as the Board of
Is there a
Health.
second?
Second.
All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye, 4-0. Dr. Joshi, if you want to join here, you may. Earl, please introduce yourself and
Earl
Dr.
Stone.
Joshi in the matter.
Earl Stoner, Health Officer for Washington County Health Department.
Good morning, Malik Joshi, President and CEO, Emeritus Health.
So we are here today to talk about the CARES funds that come through the Health Department. Those funds are to support public health response and response-related activities. As part of that, we got $13 million through the Health Department. As part of that, we have set aside $6 million to assist Meredith with supplies related to the COVID-related response. Could be disinfectants, testing supplies, and equipment and expenses, and any sort of equipment related to their response as it relates to the pandemic. There we go. They are obviously a very valued partner. Tremendous amount of testing and other activities that are being conducted through their operation, and we wouldn't be sitting here today in the position that we're in without their support and without their help. This money would be on a reimbursement basis, so they would purchase the equipment, supplies, whatever it may be, supply invoices to us, and then we would reimburse them. So we are here today seeking approval of the grant or the process to reimburse them up to $6 million in moving forward.
Yeah, I think Dr. Joshi told me this morning that, would you say you tested yesterday alone almost 400 people?
Over 400 people.
Over 400 people yesterday.
It's, we have done over 22,000 tests now, which is the highest, I think, per capita of any county in Maryland. And I just want to say thank you to Earl and to the county. We're very much appreciative of this opportunity. Supplies is a never-ending challenge. And so whether it's personal protective equipment or you name it, we are on the phone every day trying to buy more. So we really appreciate for what we have bought, what we are buying today, and what we know we'll need to buy in the future as well. Earl always says it well. I mean, the fight is not over. So, we're committed to partner and do whatever we can in working with his team and you to take care of our community. So we appreciate it.
Okay, see.
First thing I'd like to say actually is congratulations, Dr. Joshi, on your appointment, your Governor Hogan's appointment. It's great having somebody from Western Maryland appointed to our governor's cabinet position, so thank you for all your hard work. And my only question would be is $6 million, outstanding, great. Or do we know what the other $7 million, where that's going to be heading towards?
Yeah, I don't have the sheet in front of me, but the broad categories are for the health department and related expenses with our operation and moving forward, in particular contact tracing, monies for the nursing homes. We met with them yesterday afternoon. Again, a similar arrangement for reimbursement for expenses, testing related expenses and supplies for them. EMS has, I think that one of the main things that they bought were ultraviolet cleaners for, and some other related things for them. And then contingency, pot of money in moving forward. One of the things that we're really focused on, and we'll actually talk about that in a bit, is the PR campaign that would come out of that, and any related expense as we move forward, because we're in the unknown. One of the things that we really have to focus on also is flu. We could very well be in the midst of a even worse situation than we were the past couple of months once we move into the fall, because we could potentially have the traditional flu season combined with COVID-19. So certainly, especially from a hospital perspective, we want to do everything possible to get people vaccinated for the flu and get awareness out there so we don't use valuable resources, in particular from the hospital, as we move forward. One other thing that we're thinking for that pot of money is to, I think we are planning to set aside about $500,000 for community businesses and organizations to apply, similar to this, to apply for reimbursement of their expenses related to disinfectant and like PPE. So,
We all know that there's businesses, companies, nonprofits out there needing it, and I just want to make sure that we're moving forward and getting it to them. Thank you very much.
I had one more quick question, just question of curiosity, basically, for both of you. You mentioned the flu season. That's something I wanted to ask you anyway. When the flu season comes, and obviously it might be less impact because everybody's using protection for COVID.
that's the hope.
But with that being said, will that be confusing? Will you have to do 2 tests if someone comes in ill?
Yeah,
You'll do a flu and a.
Yes.
yeah, and actually early on in the pandemic, they were doing that. You typically had a
gotcha.
viral panel, your strep, your flu, and if those things were ruled out, then they moved on to the COVID test. Dr. Joshi may be able to speak more to that, but
Just
that would
taking care of people will be a challenge as well.
I
We're
bet.
actually looking at perhaps putting a tent in Smithsburg to have focused on upper respiratory and flu and other stuff, because again, you still want to separate COVID from the flu.
Gotcha.
And then one last question, apologize. You said you tested over 400 people. Is that what Meritus tested, or is that the state and Meritus?
that's what you guys tell.
Just Meritus.
And what's the state been?
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we are also doing the VEEP testing and the doing mobile testing in the outlying sites. And we had one down in City Center on the Market Lot last week. That one got about 66, 67 people. We did the one in Boonesboro was about 100 people. And then at the VEEP sites, we're doing a couple hundred a week.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Stoner, I think Mr. Triplett arrived. Please
Oh, yeah.
beg our forgiveness. We started a little early. You were on time, so just want to acknowledge your presence, so thank you.
Do you have anything to add?
Nope, I have 100% faith in what Earl's doing to combat this.
Thank you. With this conversation, and I believe there is a motion to award a grant to Meritus for supplies.
I'd motion to award grant emeritus first. Is it actually a grant or a distribution?
It's a reimbursement.
Reimbursement to Meritus for up to $6 million, yeah.
For a second.
Second that.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations. Thank you for everyone's hard work
All right.
on that.
Then we have, I think this was actually approved last week, but I think that we technically needed the Board of Health to approve it. Am I correct?
So it was approved from the county side last week. We need the approval of the Board of Health so we can actually expend the funds from the Health Department to reimburse the county.
Next. Again, my only comment on this is I wish on page 12 and page 13, the representatives would actually, names be filled in on those. So it asks for a representative from the Health Department, a representative of the county who's going to be the contact person.
Yeah, that's been taken care of, and then on the,
Yeah, we did that.
Okay, on ours, it's not shown.
okay,
Sorry, yeah.
yeah, the signed final version, we'll have that filled in.
Commissioner's motion to approve as Board of Health.
Approve the recommended motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
First and second, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Passes. Thank you. 4-0. I believe that ends our Board of Health. A motion to reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners.
Motion to reconvene.
There's a first. Is there a second to reconvene?
Second.
First and a second. Any further discussion? Thank you, Mr. Triplett, for that. All in favor to reconvene, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next agenda item, FY '22 Family Law Fund. Thanks for being here a little early. Appreciate that. Please introduce yourselves and the matter.
Good morning. I'm Christine Grossnickel from Circuit Court. And I'm Allison Hartshorn from the Office of Grant Management. So we're here this morning for the fiscal '22 Family Law Fund. We're asking for approval of the submission of the fiscal '22 Family Law Fund application in the amount of $319,756 and to accept the awarded funding. This grant program provides funds from the Department of Juvenile and Family Services Grant Program of the Maryland Judiciary each year to Washington County Circuit Court to deliver appropriate services available for low-income families who appear before the court to resolve family legal matters. Each court within the state of Maryland is required by Maryland Rules 16204 to have a Family Support Services Division to implement the goals and objectives as set forth by the DJFS. This grant would provide $319,756 for the Washington County Circuit Court's Family Court Program. Are there any questions?
Commissioners?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, budget adjustment, Cascade Town Center. Thank you. Director Oshman, would you introduce yourself and Sarah and the matter, please?
Good morning, Commissioners. Andrew Eshelman, Director of Public Works.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sarah Greaves, Chief Financial Officer. Here today for the budget adjustment for Cascade Town Center. The recommended motion today is to move to approve the budget adjustment. The adopted fiscal year 2021 budget for Cascade Town Center was developed under the premise that the property would be sold as of July 1, 2020. Due to the delay, the county must revise the budget. What you have in front of you is a budget for 6 months' time that would need to be added to the Cascade Fund. We have done estimates on how the Cascade Fund will end for fiscal year 2020. So we will be using some fund balance to balance the fund, and we will also be using a transfer from the general fund of about $88,000. The funding from the general fund will come from savings realized due to the bond savings because of the, oh my gosh, the word's escaping me. The bond refunding that we just did for the 2010 BABS bonds.
Andrew, any comments?
Any questions? I think obviously we've had a lot of discussion about when we may be able to move forward with a sale. So I think based on some recommendations of when that might happen, we picked the 6-month time period. So we may have to adjust that depending on how things play out. At the moment, we're kind of, I guess, just maintaining what we have. We're down to 1 full-time employee up there. That person also, I should note, was planning on transferring to a different department in the county, so that position has remained open. So we were trying to do our best to kind of keep costs down, but we do have ongoing maintenance for the property just to keep up on. So we'll have to see how things go if we can get the property sold before we enter another winter season, which we would have some minimal heating expenses. One of the main variables that we have is the sewer, which is largely also tied to infiltration and how much we get in the system. So one fortunate thing of all this drought is that means we haven't had as much expense on that end. But if there's any further questions.
I had a question, probably directed more toward Kirk. Are we any kind of a process to recover some of these losses, Kirk?
We're looking at the opportunities we may have to do that.
Commissioner Baker, you asked a few weeks ago what the monthly cost was for Cascade. Obviously, costs have come down because we've had less personnel dedicated to that fund. So we did an estimate, and it's approximately $65,000 per month that it costs us to run Cascade.
Okay. Commissioners, is there any more discussion? Motion to adopt? Approve? budget adjustment.
Make the motion to approve the budget adjustment.
A second.
Is there a second? Is there a second on it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay,
second,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, I didn't hear you. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 3-1, thank you. I guess next up is our audit for the ambulances. I don't see Mr.
Mr. Lehman's not here yet.
here yet. I don't really know if we should jump forward with a public hearing at 11. Do you want to go into recess?
We can't do the public hearing yet.
Not till 11. And we need the audit agreement procedure, Mr. Lehman to be here. Has he arrived?
He is not here yet.
So,
We do have everyone here for the CARES Act reallocation discussion to the commissioners.
How long will that take?
15 minutes, 20 minutes maybe?
Commissioners, do you want to jump ahead forward to do that?
Yeah.
Do that, we can do closed session.
If you got everybody for CARES, let's just do that. I think we'll be done by,
We're here in the audience. All right, let's go ahead and move forward to the budget to CARES. Thank you for everybody being here. Please introduce yourself and the matter.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sarah Greaves, Chief Financial Officer, here for the CARES Act reallocation discussion. With me, I have
Susan Small, Director of Business Development.
Susan Buchanan, Director, Office of Grant Management.
And unfortunately, Tom Brown is unable to be with us today. He was part of the ARF. So last week, staff presented to you an overview of the current status of the non-healthcare portion of the CARES Act funding, and we advised that we would be returning with any balances that remain in the categories that were originally allocating the funds. So, and we would talk about how much remains and what those funds could be used for. So that's the premise of the discussion today. First, I'd like to turn it over to both Susan Small and Susan Buchanan to give an update on the programs that they are overseeing and how much funds remain from those programs. And then I'd like to review high-level guidelines for the commissioners to consider during your discussion on how or if you would like to reallocate any funding.
Good morning, Commissioners. As of today, for the Business Stabilization Grant Rise Up, we have awarded and sent checks for $4,135,362, which is approximately 430 applications. We have received 708 applications as of close of business yesterday. Of course, we may get a couple trickle in because it closed today. So that being said, we are still projecting around the 6 million, or excuse me, 7 million, just under 7 million, because most of the grants were awarded for 10,000. Some were just under that, so it's likely that we'll be around the 7 million. So that leaves about 2 million. Again, this is a projected number as we finish the rest of the awards, but so that's where we stand today.
Okay, an update for the Together We Serve nonprofit human service provider grant. We have received total 44 applications requesting $597,941. 26 have been approved for a total of $384,595. 16 were denied and 2 are currently pending, and their requests are $25,000 combined. The awards are capped at $20,000 per applicant, and the amount of original funds that had been set aside was $1,186,060. If the 2 pending applications are awarded, we will have a grand total of $409,595 of that amount that has been expended. and looking at funds that would be available to perhaps reallocate to another expense. My recommendation would be to limit the remaining funds left to $500,000. That would allow for several more applications that may be ready to be submitted by someone who just hasn't gotten it in to be submitted and then funded, and that would provide $686,060 for other initiatives, if that would be the decision.
I want to sort of clarify something. Susan, you have a projected 7 million figure with 2 million left over. And you would have, is this the same money? No.
No, we were.
So your recommendation, I heard, what was your recommendation?
So, I mean, we've come up with a few different things. One being holding applications for now with a reapplication period in the fall for the last quarter. That's something to consider because we don't, with schools not going back, we're going to have a childcare issue for most folks. If people can't go back to work, business can't continue. Small business is a concern. That's like the basis of our job creation here in Washington County, and also retail, restaurants, theaters. There's lots of industries that struggled so much. They're going to continue to struggle as we go through this. So do we hold for reapplication? That's one consideration. Another consideration is looking at the startup businesses, the entrepreneurs, the folks who maybe had really dug their heels in starting a business after September 1. Maybe they were established prior to September 1, but just didn't get off the ground, or they did, and then they were hit with this. They technically were not part of the eligible businesses in our first round, so we could consider opening up the guidelines slightly to allow them. The other option is we've had a formal request and proposal from the CVB for some tourism marketing. So opening it up specifically to a digital display along I-81 that encourages folks to at least utilize the hotels that we have. Thereby, if they're comfortable using our restaurants for takeout, that kind of thing, whatever we can do to increase those tourism dollars here in the county is another consideration.
Did we, I wasn't here, go ahead, Jerry.
CVB has already received money for advertisement.
Not specific to the proposal that they've
I
asked for
understand that,
this.
but isn't part of their budget already, will they earmark a percentage of their budget for advertisement for?
They may, yes. In terms of the CARES Act funding, there is a portion of the funding that is allowable specific to tourism. That is a recovery type effort that you can use this money directly towards. We've provided the FAQ in there, and I know that there's a highlighted section, I can read it off to you, but it specifically states that we can use this money towards actively promoting tourism in the
Let
county
me ask you
in a
and
safe
I've
way.
always been a big supporter of CVB
Sure.
from day one. But how do we balance bringing in tourism with governor's executive orders on events? How do we say we're bringing people in and at the same time we're trying to distance people?
I think the consideration has to be we are asking folks to do things that are done in the way that follows the governor's orders. So utilizing the C&O Canal and the trails and things that we have that are outdoor recreation, and even just asking them, hey, if you're on I-81 and you're passing through our small 12 miles of 81 and you need somewhere to rest, we have hotels along the corridor that can be used, and that's then refunding our HRT that we're missing out on right now.
Well, I brought that up in response to, I think our hotel motel money funding is drastically down, which they receive 50% of, which helps fund their budgets for everything.
It also helps fund economic development. I mean, that's how we do a lot of our incentives, and our Maryland Economic Assistance Fund is matched through that. When commerce funds, we match. So it's a big consideration. There's a lot to balance out there.
Now, with this money, the Together We Rise and the Together We Serve, can that be utilized together in these, or does they have to be utilized in two different things because of the grant funding that they are?
It can be reallocated to any category or acceptable use.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
which if you want me to segue, I can move into some of the criteria related to the funding.
I had another question for Susan. I'm not so sure, holding applications, and then reapplication, I don't understand.
So I guess my suggestion would be that we pause on accepting any at this point and then reopen it for anyone who may have still been experiencing a hardship to reapply
So
for
you're
an
saying
additional.
the people that have already applied, you're gonna hold their application? and then
No,
make
no,
them
I'm just
reapply?
holding the fund and not awarding any more money at the moment.
New money.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
people that have applied now would still get it.
What
Yep.
you're trying to
New
do,
applicants.
we have an open-end, no deadline registration. So you're trying to put some emphasis on closing out the applications now and coming back later and
Yes.
reopening if there's a need.
Right.
But
Whether
someone-
they've applied before or not,
They're eligible to,
if they can
receive a second
show
time?
that they're still experiencing a hardship in their profit and loss statements and documentation, then we would re-award them another amount.
So what happens if the remaining applicants use up all remaining monies?
Well, at this point, if we stop right now, we're still under the amount that was allocated to business stabilization, which was 8.96 million. So we've only received 708 applications. And even if we awarded all of them the 10,000, we still wouldn't be at that total amount. So we still have some remaining in the small business stabilization.
So how many more applications do you have to review yet?
We still, we only have 30 to review, so we're almost done. Yeah.
I was thinking there was hundreds.
No, most of them are in the process of getting their checks and being awarded right now. Yep.
Did we get a clarification? I probably missed it if we did, on landlords.
That was the next one.
Did we get a clarification on that?
Well, I think I can speak to that a little bit, and Susan, jump in if I say anything that's incorrect. I also talked to Tom Brown last night about this same topic. So in the FAQ that you have attached to the ARF, there is a section that specifically addresses individuals facing hardships, so tenants, and the funding that would be available for them if they're experiencing a hardship directly related to a COVID-19 event, whether it's a loss of job or whatever that may be. It does not specifically address landlords and their eligibility. From my perspective, it's kind of looking at a start at the bottom and it'll trickle up. So if we're helping to serve our population that's suffering and we want to keep them from getting evicted or becoming homeless because of this COVID-19 pandemic, then we would provide, we or someone we would contract with, there are nonprofits that do this, use that agency to provide help to the tenant, which would then provide support for the landlord. That is how the guidelines read to us. That may be an acceptable use. It certainly looks acceptable. What is iffy is if we can provide funding to the landlords. After discussing it with our team, we would lean more towards working out a program for the tenants and having that trickle up effect because it's specifically identified. The more we move or shift from what the guidelines say are eligible, the more likely we could open ourselves up to an audit. And then at the end of the day, it's not necessarily what we think is eligible, it's what does the auditor think is eligible, and the county would be liable to pay back any funding that was
The
deemed
example I'm
ineligible.
hearing, is I'm the landlord, you're renting my property, you haven't paid me since COVID started, which is happening quite a bit. And I know revenue loss is a bone of contention, but I can't pay for that property and my mortgage payment now because you're not paying me my rent. That goes from revenue loss to I can't pay for my property.
I think we're talking about two types of tenancy here. So in mine, it would be commercial tenancy. So we actually...
It could be residential, but it'd still be commercial,
yes,
yeah.
it could be. It could be, yes, but that wouldn't be eligible for this because it's not necessarily
Right.
small business stabilization. And we identified mortgage and rent and lease payments as a hardship. If a business is facing that hardship and they cannot pay, we helped to cover that for them. So they should have made that payment by now. Therefore, the landlord would have received that income. And if they are a small business, an LLC, or that kind of thing, they should be able to then have that operational income coming in from this grant. From a residential standpoint, and I think that's kind of a little bit of a different beast, because, you know, you're talking about large buildings, or if they have multiple tenants, and then, so how do you handle that? Because it is also probably a business. But
I think what we're saying is in the guidelines, it's not specific, cut and dry, yes and no. And so we have to use some judgment, and we have to assess how much risk the commissioners are willing to take on this subject.
Have you got, I mean, we've all been contacting businesses to get on board here. And a lot of them don't know about it. I know we're doing a good job getting it out there, just people just don't know about it. But have we had any applications from multi-unit apartments? We have no landlord applications, so it's not as I hear it, but it's not a big deal.
no, we haven't reviewed
If you haven't had any applications, then that tells me that let's continue with what we're doing. You know,
Yeah.
I'm just saying what people are saying to me.
I mean,
They still have the ability, if they want to fill out the application, provide you with all of the information, you all review the information, and if it meets the guidelines of the program, then you have the right to say that qualifies.
yeah, I mean, we also considered, you know, if they have staff, if they've applied for PPP and had some, you know, so I guess if the federal government recognized them as a qualified business because they applied and received funding from that, that was kind of a consideration, but we didn't rank and we didn't, you know, do that. We just took a look at what their application stated, so.
I have one question. I read through these, guidelines, and we all know that our EMS is hurting because of, well, their calls are down 30%, reimbursements are down, all of that. And it says in some of these that we could use some of this money to cover, you know, in some cases, first responders and critical care health workers that contract COVID-19 are eligible for workers' compensation coverage. So I don't know if there's anything that we can do to help out some of the EMS. And there's another one. The guidance states the fund may be used to support a broad range of use, including payroll expenses for several classes of employees whose services are substantially dedicated to mitigating or responding to the COVID public health emergency.
I think part of the conflict there is that the costs are not eligible if they were included in the most recently approved budget. So, you know, their personnel costs obviously are not in our budget, but they were budgeted for. And I do know that the EMS companies, I believe, some have applied and been successful with Susan's program. They've been able to
I was
utilize
just making
that.
sure that's something that we have looked at, because they've had increased costs, as we all know. We just got some money sent to them
Yeah.
for different things. So.
When we looked at that, it became apparent that, yes, they met
Yeah.
the parameters of that program.
Is that same for fire?
And have we reached out to all of the EMS?
It's open. If they want to submit, they can submit and be
Outstanding.
evaluated. Yeah.
Twice.
Have you had any fire to submit?
Have you had fire submit, Susan? Fire company?
I'd have to go back and look specifically. I know we've had quite a few companies submit, though, and received.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, staff, what is it you want us to decide?
I think, you know, it's up for the commissioners to determine, number one, you can see what balances remain in these categories. I didn't specifically address IT balance because, you know, when everything's added up, about 1.2 million was allocated to information technology projects, and if we only do the projects included in that original assessment, possibly 100,000 would be available for use, but all the time, and Josh O'Neill is here if you want him to speak on it, it seems like there continues to be more IT-related projects that fit the parameters of the grant. So those funds that remain could be easily utilized by some of those other projects. So I think what we're here today is to determine if you want to reallocate funds that remain, if you want to hold them for September or October to see if there's a need that is there that is not a need today that we would meet. Also, if you wanted to reallocate funds for tourism. And so real quick, I will just,
Well, my thoughts are right now, I like to see these options in writing, so I can have them in front of me and see. So I'd like these options to be brought back in writing next week, so we can see them. There's no immediate need to be done today, is there?
Perhaps,
are
perhaps not
there-
next week, but perhaps a couple weeks from now.
Whenever, yeah.
I mean, this is, just from a timeline perspective, I mean, obviously, the CARES Act was passed by Congress in March, the middle of March. We received notice of what we were gonna get in the beginning of May. Since that time, obviously, we've set up these programs. We've put together the spending plan, which was approved by the commissioners as well as the state. Obviously, we're about 2.5 months into this. We wanted to give you an opportunity of here's where we are now, sort of gauge the temperature in terms of what you want to do for the future. These funds have to be spent by the end of the year, but we do have some flexibility, obviously, because things may look quite different 2 months from now or 3 months from now.
That's my suggestion. Bring these back in writing. We'll approve them individually, have a discussion on them.
I definitely agree with that, bring back with specific numbers, but I'll tell you, I'm in support of, I'll say, stopping the business funding and then restarting to allow some business to reapply so they could get additional funding. I think that's a very good idea. I also think the CVB money, giving them some marketing. Now, the question I have with the CVB money, does that money, if we give them any money, is that money required to be spent this year? I know we have to give the money, so they'd have to spend the money this year, okay.
And also, the grant program is still open. It doesn't have a closing date. So if the commissioners want to close that as well, that would be a decision that would need to be made, or leave it open. It doesn't seem like that many applications are coming in for nonprofits.
Nonprofit grant has dwindled down to maybe one a week, one or two.
What's the business looking like?
We only got maybe 2 over the last 2 days.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'd probably
so-
process what you have, stop it, hold off, do what President Klein said. And I'm all about holding off to see what the future holds, because, you know, it's going to be either better or worse or stay neutral. I don't think I think I would be very willing to wait until fall.
Yeah, my only thoughts on that are, suppose there is a business out there that's really, really in need and desperate, it's going to close their business down. Some businesses, $10,000 might be the difference between keeping them in business or putting them out of business. How can we address emergency situations?
I mean, there's nothing that they can't contact us, and
But if it's
we can't
closed
bring it
and
to
we're not
you.
allocating anything, that means they're going to be lost in that little.
Well, the money is still allocated for small business stabilization, so I would encourage any business to, give us a call, let you know if they have a real concern. I mean, we could certainly bring an individual case
Okay.
before you, and say,
Yeah.
for
I just
this
want to be able to
purpose-
have that ability to.
Sure, yeah, I mean, I'll help. Yeah.
One thing we could decide today is the stabilization grant, are we stopping it and reigniting it later?
I think
want?
it would be a good idea for maybe us to consider pausing, let our teams,
When's the current deadline for that?
it was midnight, so, yeah.
It's closed. All right, I suggest bringing
midnight tonight,
back in writing with the options for
Today
us.
is, yeah,
Yeah, it's
Okay.
midnight. It's midnight. It closes midnight tonight.
midnight.
So, and I think it's a great idea, because like you said, if there's a business that is struggling, well, if they max out their $10,000, they get no more money, but at a later date, we have a little bit more money that can help them.
No, I understand.
Keep open.
Okay.
I'm
I
excited.
just want someone that hasn't applied.
Agreed.
Yeah, I want to have a contingency if it's an emergency we can act on it. I don't want to back ourselves into a corner.
Okay, staff, you know where you're at to come back with the options?
Can I get a clarification that, on the Together We Serve program, do you want me to I had originally come up with capping it at 500,000 to allow that 686. Do you want me just to continue to accept those applications since they're just coming in at a very slow rate until we come back, or cap it at the 500?
I would, if it's continuing at such a slow rate and we're going to be coming back in a short period,
Okay.
let's.
I just wanted to be clear. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would it be all right to ask if, when we're talking about this, that the CVB be here so we can understand what exactly they want to use for that money?
Yeah, we'll consider that. We'll talk about that. All right, I think we're going to go back, the audit agreed upon procedures. Chris, is that Chris Lehman?
Yes.
Oh, that's all right. Dale Fishak, do you want to come up here and join? Thank you, folks, for cleansing.
Just as a reminder, at 11, we have a public hearing.
Yeah, at 11, we have to break for a public hearing. We may ask you to step aside at 11 and stay to finish if we go beyond, okay?
All right.
All right, please introduce yourself and the matter.
I can take this off, right?
Yeah, we'll get the microphone. And you and Tim need to
Oh,
spread
maybe I
out a
should
little
move. I'm
bit
sorry.
more. Yeah.
The new world we live in.
Thank you for your concern.
Yep. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Chris Lehman. I'm with SB and Company. We were engaged to do the audit and the agreed upon procedures for the EMS companies.
Dale Fishak, President of Washington County Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association.
So what I've prepared this morning is a scope of the procedures we were engaged to perform for both the financial statement audit and the agreed upon procedures for the 8 EMS companies as well as the Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association. So what I was going to walk through this morning was the results of those procedures. If you have any questions, just feel free to stop me as I get through the slides here. I just wanted to highlight, the companies are listed here. The fiscal year under audit was fiscal year 2018, which in most cases the companies have a June 30 fiscal year end. There's 2 companies that had a calendar year end at 12/31/2018. So that was the scope of the procedures covering that 1-year period for each company. And I split this up between going through the agreed upon procedures results and then walking through the financial statement results kind of in 2 separate sections. Here, and I know it's hard to read, but what I did was I included the 28 procedures that the county engaged us to perform for the agreed upon procedures. These were the procedures that were included in the RFP that the county put out. And what I did was I tried to follow the same numbering system in that RFP listing each step here. And just high level, the objectives of the procedures we did was we looked at retirement plan contributions over certain periods. We look at the accuracy and timeliness of those contributions. We looked at W-2s and 1099 reportings for accuracy. We looked at overtime and compensatory accruals for the fiscal year. We also went through the payroll process. We looked at what information was reported to each company's board on a periodic basis and reported that within the agreed upon procedures. The second set of steps here, that continues with the 28 here on this slide. We also looked at the payable process. We looked at a sample of disbursements for compliance with the spending policy. If there was any travel, we looked at 100% of the travel of each company during that time period. We looked for potential related party transactions, timeliness of deposits, bank reconciliations, and looking at the 990 as well. So it was a lot of procedures included within that AUP. Some of that overlaps with the audit, some of it doesn't because it's just very specific to a certain process that we were asked to look at. What I did here on this slide was I used a heat map to show you each company there listed to the left there. Green meant that there were no findings that were to be reported in our procedures. Yellow means that there was a finding related to that procedure. In a couple slides, I do have a summary of what types of findings we had, because I know, this just tells you numerically by company which findings we had. On this slide just continues with the remaining 28 procedures. So again, we have the companies listed to the left, and then in yellow were any findings that we reported related to those procedures. This slide here puts them in categories. So starting with the left and kind of walking through the right, if we identified any material weaknesses in the controls, that would be in yellow here. If there were bank reconciliations either not completed or not completed on a timely basis, those are in yellow here. We had a number of journal entries that we proposed as part of the financial statement audit, mostly related to year-end accruals, getting payables on the books, just to make sure that the proper cutoff had been recognized within the financial statements. So you'll see a number of items under the journal entries. There was a couple findings related to retirement plan contributions, policy and documentation, membership drive reconciliation, 1099 reporting. So those were kind of the high-level buckets, if you will, of what types of findings we had. Any questions so far? Okay. Going into the financial statement process. So again, we did a financial statement audit, which here we're allowed to use a little more judgment. You know, we use sampling, we use a risk-based audit approach, which I've included here. I'm not going to bore you with how an audit works, but basically it's a combination of looking at internal controls, doing financial misstatement analysis, doing substantive testing, you know, validating the balance sheet for accuracy. So that was the process we used for the financial statement audit. The high-risk areas for each company. Now, this doesn't apply necessarily to every company. Not every company had debt. Not every company had investments. But you'll see our focus was on bank reconciliations for the audit. If there were investments, we looked at those valuations. The collectability of any accounts receivable. We looked at how fixed assets were reported on the books. We looked for completeness of liabilities. We looked at the debt accounting and transactions, and then proper recording and classification of revenue and expenses. And then on this slide just kind of walks through the results. Although we had a number of entries, you know, we proposed a number of audit entries to get the financial statements presented in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. And by booking those entries, we were able to give each company a clean or unmodified opinion. And although we had those entries, when we look at the entries, we have to make a determination of, is that indicative of control weakness, which could be either a material weakness or a significant deficiency. And although in most cases here, you'll see most companies did either have a significant deficiency or material weakness, by getting the financial statements correct through the journal entries, that still allowed us to issue unmodified or clean opinions. Questions so far? And then at a high level, instead of going through the financial statements in detail for each company, I've included, and again, this is just for the fiscal year 18 ending period, total assets, liabilities, and then the net assets for each company. So that's basically a summary of the balance sheet for each company at the end of fiscal year 18. And then the next slide on page 14 shows the profit and loss activity. If you look, and you'll see the revenue and the expenses for each company for the fiscal year. You'll see the change in net assets for most companies. Most of them have a loss for the year. What I tried to also show here was depreciation, since that's a non-cash item, that is an expense. In some cases, that is the main reason for the negative change in net assets. So we have that shown there. And then as well as any company that has debt, we've included the principal and interest payments that they would have made during the fiscal year to show that.
That brings me to the previous financial statement highlights.
Yep.
You've got the assets listed, liabilities, and of course we're showing depreciation. But what's the cash assets versus the physical assets? Because they're all, I mean, there's the equipment, the buildings is unbelievably expensive, but if you've got zero cash, well, and you're losing money, that's a big problem.
Yep, and they are both included in these figures. I did not break it out for this presentation, but that does include fixed assets, and I would agree with you, that's going to be the largest asset.
Yeah, would you be able to give us that information?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, I can do that today. What I'll do is I'll just amend this presentation and just split that out.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep. Then lastly, the material weaknesses we had, and I put the definition here, but this is really, if there's a control not in place that would not catch a potential material misstatement on a timely basis, that would be a material weakness in the internal controls. And we had material weaknesses both at Smithsburg and Hancock For Smithsburg, the bank reconciliations weren't being done throughout the year, which is a fraud risk, not having those done. There was a lack of controls and monitoring around the payroll process, and as well as the payroll accruals were not recorded. For Hancock, there was also bank reconciliations not being done timely throughout the year, as well as the books there was two sets of books basically that at the end of the fiscal year, those two sets were combined, and a lot of journal entries were needed to get the books reported accurately for the financial statements. So ideally, there should be one ledger that you would have, and you would reconcile that typically on a periodic
Is that
basis.
going to be corrected instead of having two books all merged into one year round?
I can't speak for what they're going to do going forward, but I did, we talked about this not being the ideal, the ideal way to account for the books on a year-end basis.
Pardon the interruption, we're closing in on 11 a.m. I'd like for you to break for a moment and come back after we do our public hearing at 11.
Okay.
Because I have some questions. Sorry for that. But
Okay, that's all right.
Thank you. Do I need to read the public hearing statement? Okay. Next up at 11 o'clock will be the public hearing for development revenue bonds for the benefit of Homewood. That phone call will start at about approximately 11. Sarah, I'll put it in your hands.
Yep.
And thank you to
Thank
Mr.
you.
Lehman and Mr. Fishak for cooperating.
Can someone bring me a microphone to hold up to the phone, please?
Three.
Sorry, they're confirming the passcode. I just wanted to make sure it would work. It's giving me some problems with the passcode. We'll continue to try this again. Sarah Greaves, Washington County.
Sarah, did you join the line?
Good morning. This is Sarah Greaves. Can you hear me?
Sarah, hi, it's Lindsay Rader. Can you hear me?
I can. There's a little bit of static. Can you say something again, Lindsay?
Okay. This is Lindsay Rader, the county's bond counsel. Can you hear me?
Yes, Lindsay, we can hear you.
Great. We have opened the public hearing for purposes of the proposed economic development revenue bonds for the benefit at Homewood at Williamsport, Maryland, Inc. Homewood at Frederick, Maryland, Inc. And I am on the line with Thad Rockwood, who is the president of Homewood Retirement Centers, Inc., the parent company of the two operating entities I just referenced, and also Fran Brinker of Miles in Stockbridge. And other than the three of us and the county, we don't believe that anybody else is on the line at the moment, but would you like me to first inquire whether anyone else is on the line? And if not, then I can give you a brief overview of the purpose of this TEFRA hearing.
Yes, please do, Lindsay.
Okay. Fran, Thad, are you aware of any member of the public on the line, the dial-in line with us who would like to give public testimony?
I'm not aware of any.
Okay. So there is a resolution that will be before the Board of County Commissioners following this public hearing. And let me give you an overview of it in case anyone else does join us during this public hearing. Under the Maryland Economic Development Revenue Bond Act, which as the Act, Maryland counties may issue revenue bonds and loan the proceeds to what are termed as facility users. In 2007 and 2011, Washington County issued revenue bonds for the benefit of the Homeward at Williamsport Continuing Care Retirement Community. And in 1997 and 2014, Frederick County, Maryland issued revenue bonds under the Act for the benefit of the Homewood at Frederick Continuing Care Retirement Community. Homewood Retirement Centers and a related foundation was a co-borrower with each of the two operating entities for those respective series of bonds issued for the two separate continuing care communities. It is common for a multi-affiliated entity, such as Homewood Retirement Centers, to move to an obligated group structure in order to restructure its debt, remove certain parent companies as co-borrowers, and strengthen its owner-operator affiliates' borrowing power. And because the headquarters of Homewood Retirement Center is located within the county and manages all its central functions from within Washington County, it has asked Washington County to consider issuing revenue bonds and loaning the proceeds to Homewood at Williamsport MD Inc. and Homewood at Frederick MD Inc., the two operating companies, which will serve as co-borrowers and the members of a Maryland obligated group in order to refund in whole or in part outstanding series of bonds that I mentioned previously issued by Washington County and Frederick County, and to finance certain new improvements at both retirement communities' campuses. Under the Act, a Maryland county may issue bonds for facilities that are located outside its jurisdiction. As is the case with prior conduit revenue bonds, which Washington County has issued for various parties, the resolution provides, in accordance with the Act, that bonds can be issued from time to time in a maximum principal amount not to exceed $165 million. Delegates to the President of the County Commissioner, for purposes of the Act, is the Chief Executive Officer of the county, the authority to determine certain details of any issued bonds by executive order or otherwise. The resolution also delegates to various county officials the authority to act as authorized representatives of Washington County in connection with any bonds that are issued and obligations under the bond documents, provides for the execution of issued bonds and related documents, provides for covenants of the county in the event any series of bonds is issued on a tax-exempt basis, which is anticipated, authorizes certain officials of the county to agree to modifications to documents post-closing or to give consents or approvals provided for in the documents, provided that the approval of the Board of County Commissioners is not required by federal tax law or for another reason. Provides for acceptance of a letter of a letter of intent, which was submitted to the county by the Maryland Obligated Group, and which is an exhibit to the resolution. Most importantly, provides that any revenue bonds issued by the county do not constitute full faith and credit pledge of the county's taxing powers or revenues. They are limited obligations of the county, payable only to the extent the borrowers make debt service payments with respect to the bond. So the county's revenues are not put at risk if it serves as the bond issue. And in accordance with the Act, the resolution, there's no pecuniary liability of the county if it issues the bonds. If the resolution is adopted, the bonds must be issued within 1 year from the date of its issuance. And the Maryland Obligated Group has agreed to pay all costs in connection with the transactions, whether or not any bonds are ever issued. At this point, I guess I will stop and first ask if any member of the public joined the line to give testimony. Okay. And I guess next I will ask, did the county receive any written comments emailed to the county clerk by the deadline yesterday with respect to this public hearing that need read into the public record?
No, the county has not.
Okay. Then I am available to answer any questions, and Mr. Rothrock is also available to ask any questions from the county commissioners or staff.
Commissioners, any questions, comments?
No questions, Lindsay?
Okay, then I guess the county may declare the public hearing closed and then can move forward to consideration of the resolution.
Public hearing
We
is
will
now.
stay on the line in case you have questions in connection with
Please stay on the line.
consideration of the resolution.
Now the public hearing is now closed. Commissioners, again, any comments or a motion to approve the resolution to adopt?
Make a motion to adopt the resolution as stated.
Is there a second?
A second.
First and a second to adopt the resolution. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor to adopt, say aye.
Aye.
4-0. Thank you, Lindsay. That now concludes our discussion.
Thank you, Lindsay. I don't know if you could hear that. There was a 4-0 vote to adopt the resolution. All right. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Mr. Lehman, Mr. Fishak, would you please return, and thank you for your understanding. You want to back up a previous step and continue your decision, sir?
Yeah, I'll go back through the slide. Just going back through this slide, we had two companies where we identified material weaknesses. One being Smithsburg, with just a lack of bank reconciliations being done on a timely basis, just lack of oversight of internal controls, and a number of deficiencies we identified in the payroll process. The other company where we had material weaknesses was at Hancock, and what we identified there was not a single general ledger maintained during the year. And just best practices for accounting, you would typically have one ledger that includes all your accounts, and that would be reconciled, on a periodic basis, typically monthly. And we saw that that wasn't happening. It was basically a year-end reconciliation process.
These weaknesses will be addressed by those individual companies.
Well, I can tell them that they're weaknesses, but it would be up to the company to decide what does that mean for them going forward.
Did you go over this with them at all? Or?
Yes, I met with the chief and walked through the report in detail.
Awesome, thank you.
So those are the material weaknesses there. The significant deficiencies are less significant than a material weakness, but they still rise to the level of bringing that attention to the governance. And most of these tie into having year-end accruals booked properly. So most of the companies hadn't had an annual audit, and for financial statements to be in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles and to receive the clean opinion, we have to look at cutoff. So we look at invoices being accrued to the period that they relate to. We look at salaries when they were incurred and were they booked to the right period, looking at receivables, making sure the receivables are clear. So the deficiencies we had in most of these cases were related to proper cutoff to get the financial statements properly stated. Questions there?
Can you explain this, the last bullet part in Smithsburg, write-off of prepaid assets?
Yeah, so there was some items that were sitting on the balance sheet, some costs that management couldn't identify what they were related to. So they happened in the past. These were bills that were paid, but instead of being an expense, they were capitalized as an asset. And typically you would only have a prepaid asset if you paid the bill prior to receiving the service. When we questioned management about it, they didn't know any future service that was going to be provided related to those invoices. So those were period expenses, an expense rather than shown as a prepaid asset on the books.
Thank you.
Yep. Then just continuing on with the other companies, again, these mostly tie into the year-end accruals that we had. And that's all I had.
So I have a couple questions.
Yes.
Again, thank you for your helping us understand
Nope,
the breakdown.
sure, it was quite an endeavor.
So all these weaknesses and deficiencies to be improved are recommendations made to these companies to implement, correct?
Yes.
And what will be the follow-up on that by us to make sure they're implemented? Another audit, or do they report back to us?
I mean, really, you could handle it anyway. I mean, our responsibility for auditing 2018, where our responsibility basically would end, is letting governance know what the recommendations are, giving those recommendations to the companies.
It'd be our obligation to make sure they're following up with it.
Yes. Now, if you hired another set of auditors to come back and say audit 2019, typically that subsequent audit, you would follow up on recommendations. Now, I don't know if this was a one-time item or not, but typically, if you get an audit on a recurring basis, the auditors would follow up to see what has been done, if anything, on those recommendations.
The difficult with that is if we did since this was the fiscal year of 2018 that we did.
So you'd basically have to see it in 2020 because 19 is basically over.
Yeah,
so
we need to do an audit of 2020.
So if you had a 19 audit, I would if I did the 19 audit, I'm going to come back more likely than not with the same exact findings. If not, unless something else went awry. But given that 2018 is long gone, chances are that didn't get corrected in 19, given that we've just the companies just are now aware of what these recommendations and these items are. I would imagine, most audits that we do, people want to make the corrections, but I can't say that they would. But if we did, let's just say we did a 2020 audit, I would come back and report, were those items addressed or not? And if they were repeats, of course, they would be deficiencies again, because that would affect the current period under audit again.
That's what I'm saying. A 2019 audit wouldn't make sense. A 2020, because now you're giving them corrections what they actually have to do. That would be more appropriate if we're looking down that way. And then also in this case, Smithsburg's under a different set of rules at this period.
In the case, of fiscal year 2020, in some cases, these recommendations have just been provided to some of the companies in June and even July. So if they have a June 30, 2020 year end, it may make more sense even to move forward to fiscal year 21, correct?
Yeah.
The final question or statement or input I'd like to request. This is what the average citizen is going to ask of me. Through your audit, through your findings, are basically, they're all fine procedures. There's no major evidence of wrongdoing like one discovered at.
Yeah, what I always give the disclaimer that a financial statement audit and even agreed upon procedures audit is not a fraud audit. So, you know.
But overall, you find every company pretty much in line doing things.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at those agreed upon procedures, it took a while to get there. I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, they're volunteers that typically are ahead of the finance function. So it's, you know, it takes a while to get everything together. It's the first audit. And I don't think, other than the material weaknesses that I presented to you all, I don't think, I haven't seen anything where I'd say the sky is falling here.
Today's date on a timeline of history is pretty much to say that all these companies are pretty much in line doing their books as best as they can.
More or less, yes.
Stretching the language out
Yes.
a little bit. I'm trying to defend them because the public's always going to say this and that, but now we've had this financial audit and we've proven or demonstrated that most of them are on board with everything except for some weaknesses and deficiencies, which they've
And I
all
would say
been
that would be a lack of just not getting an annual audit, which I shouldn't say not a big deal as an auditor because I need to be independent, but not booking an accrual, like I don't put a lot of weight into that being a problem. Not doing the bank recs, I put a lot of weight into
So
that
overall,
being a
this
problem.
was a good report.
Most of it, yes.
Okay.
But I don't want to put words in your mouth because I'm
You should
trying to
run-
be
you should run for office.
objective of what the.
Commissioners, any other questions, follow up?
Only thing that I would like to see is what
Yeah,
you said.
I'll send that to Sarah this afternoon.
And I'd like to see, I think you've talked to them, but that the reconciliations are being done, and I would ask that we could follow up and just, ask them, hey, are you continuing to do this and following up so that these don't become a problem? Because like you said, the reconciliations could become a fraud risk, or is a fraud risk and could become fraud, and we've had that happen prior, and this is taxpayer dollars, this is donations dollars, and we want to make sure that's being used properly, so thank you.
Sure.
All right,
Honestly, the companies probably want a break from seeing me after this experience.
All right, well, gentlemen, if not, thank you very much. Thanks for being here.
Can I make a quick comment?
Sure, Dale.
I would just like to say I was pleasantly surprised from the president's chair as to the results. I'm not that I expected anything bad, but I think most companies can look at this as an educational tool and a learning process, and now
Indeed.
they've got some guidance as to ways to move forward. And I do echo, I think we need to follow up, but I also think we need to also then even look at the fire departments as we move forward with audits, so that we have a clean presentation to the public across the board of all fire and EMS.
Haven't we decided that the audits will be done on the fire next?
Yeah, I think we said we just haven't started it with the.
Yeah.
That's
and
next.
Were written results provided to each of the companies?
Yes, we've given them reports.
Okay. Thank you.
There's currently, just to interject, there's currently no allocated budget for any fire audits at this time.
Was there a vote on that in the,
We said
at
we'd
one
do it
time?
we said we'd do it after the.
Yeah, well, we can work on that budget to allocate.
I know
money.
now funding's not, but I just, if we're gonna be an open book, we need to be an open book holistically across the board. And I
Very good.
support that. The other thing I would like to remind, when you see the cash figures that comes out as far as what the companies have on hand is to remember that, a lot of that's easily expended along the year when you look at their budgets.
Well, this is the end of 2018,
Yeah,
so it's
yeah,
years
so it's
ago.
not even good figures. But if they get, when the public looks at that, I wanted them to remind that, one, it's 2018 figures, and two, when they look at cash on hand, in an EMS world, it costs about $500,000 in payroll a year, and a new ambulance equipped is about $300,000. So it doesn't take long to expend those dollars.
And I think that's the main reason why I wanted to show it is because where you have Williamsport that has $3.2 million of assets, they don't have $3.2 million of
Exactly.
cash. And that's why I think it should be broken out so the public can see, yes, they might have a lot of assets, but that assets in buildings and equipment. And we need to see that.
Yep, and I appreciate that comment. I'm glad you brought that out earlier so that the public is aware when they review this that, to look at that in that light.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right,
very
well, thank
much.
you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming. Next up, Chris Boggs, Land Preservation. Would you please come forward and introduce the matter? Thank you, gentlemen.
Morning. Chris Boggs, Land Preservation Planner. This item is the Bonnard and Peggy Morgan Rural Legacy Easement. It is a 10.47 acre easement on Snyder's Landing Road. It's coming. It's I guess a little bit outside of the town of Sharpsburg. You can see actually on that map on the left there all that light green around it is permanent easement, so it's kind of filling in a gap there. But it's just two wooded parcels is what it is. There are no houses or buildings on it or anything. It's got a little wet weather swale that runs through it. It's kind of just filling a gap, but it's a pretty high ranking property because of its contiguity to other permanent easements and location and all that. It's going to be a rural legacy easement to preserve the scenic and environmental property, and it's going to aid in buffering any sort of runoff that might head toward the Potomac River as well. As you can see, it's pretty close to the river and the canal. Let's see, there are 2 development rights that will be extinguished with this easement, and as you know, that's our transaction for conservation easements. So for this property or project, we'll be using part of the FY20 Rural Legacy funding, and that's we got a little over 1.5 million for that, and we're starting to work our way through that right now. These funds are 100% state dollars through DNR, and of course we get the 3% admin and 1.5% compliance costs added to the easement. That money comes for that's for monitoring and administrative efforts on the county's part that the county receives for that. Both the state and the Rural Legacy Board and the Department of Natural Resources approve our program, and if the county rejects the funds, they'll be allocated to other counties in Maryland. Our recommended motion is to approve the Morgan Rural Legacy easement for $28,066.64 on 10.47 acres. Any questions?
I do have a question.
Sure.
So how do they derive, are you saying that they're going to receive $28,000 plus
Correct.
to extinguish a development right on
2
10
development
acres?
rights, yeah.
Well, those development rights are worth way more than $28,000.
Correct.
I guess my question is, how did they derive that amount of money?
There's an easement valuation formula that is approved by DNR that we use here, and it takes into account fair market value for parcels in each election district as well as conservation values, such as contiguity to other permanent easements, soils qualities, size impacts the easement value significantly because it affects multiple different categories. It also takes into account historic, scenic views, environmental resources. But generally, you'll see with the smaller the parcel, and the lower the easement value. The state usually has us capped around $3,000 or $3,200 per acre. This one came in right around $2,800 per acre, and most of that can be attributed just to the size of the property. There's a lot of different categories that they just, they cap out at a certain size, but this doesn't get there. So.
Go ahead. I was just going to motion to approve it.
Oh, no, I was just, no.
You got more questions?
Yeah, really, it's just curiosity questions, but.
I'd motion to approve the Bonner J. Peggy Morgan easement for $28,066.64.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Commissioners, can we take a 5-minute recess.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. I want to return to staff comments. Mr. Curry, would you come forward and introduce yourself in the matter? Thank you for coming back.
Good morning, Rick Curry, Director of Purchasing. I'm here this morning to ask forgiveness of the board for an error I made last week in making a recommendation of award for intergovernmental purchase INTG 20-0037 for one John Deere tractor for the Highway Department. I'd ask that the board award a purchase of a tractor in an amount of $66,695.39. The correct total for that tractor is $68,695.39. $68,695.39.
And it's slower.
And I thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
You got a motion to approve that, Kirk?
You need a motion.
Motion to approve that.
Hey, first and second.
And
Discussion.
to rescind the previous award and to award it in the amount.
68.
Yep.
All right, I have first and second. Thank you for the update on the language of the motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you, Rick. Next up, COVID Public Relations. Welcome, Mr. Stoner.
Thank you. I am obviously Earl Stoner from the Health Department. I am filling in for Tom Brown, who sends his apologies. He couldn't make it this morning. We are, I guess, really the county, not the Health Department. I should preface it by saying, requesting to accept and approve public relations project and allow the county attorney and the president of the county commissioners to authorize all contracts which may be required to complete the project. This is one of the major projects under the MOU that we just approved. It's obviously a public relations awareness and education project that's really designed to educate and raise awareness on the importance of wearing face coverings, physical distancing, also known as social distancing, and hand washing. It really is an effort to get everybody on board with these preventive measures as we moved out of the lockdown into reopening. Really the onus, the predominant onus is on individuals in our community now from a personal responsibility perspective. There's $500,000 allotted for the project. It's my understanding that the county does not require standard procurement policy for advertising projects. This particular project will really hit 7 different media outlets. We're really looking at creation of a digital platform, PSAs, banners, vehicle wraps, all your standard promotional venues and avenues. And it'll obviously be broadcast on multiple platforms, social media, radio, TV, newspaper, and various and assorted other venues. The importance of the project, obviously, is to get people doing those preventive measures. As we know, in moving forward, the pandemic just continues to evolve. One of the reasons I'm here today is because of that. Tom couldn't be here, and we didn't really want to wait another week to begin to work on this and get it rolled out to the community. So really approving this project as a whole and authorizing the president of the commission and the county attorney to initiate those contracts will allow us to really meet the critical messaging deadlines that we have in place. Any questions?
A motion to approve.
Second.
A first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Pangbourne Park dredging. Mr. Mason? Hear me, everybody? everybody introduce yourself and the matter.
Morning, Commissioners. Jeremy Mose, Director, Division of Environmental Management.
Dave Mason, Deputy Director of Solid Waste. Here today for either approval or denial of the request from the City of Hagerstown to accept material from the Pangborn Park dredging project at no cost. Project is slated to start here in the next couple weeks, beginning of August. Estimated between 1,200 and 1,500 cubic yards of material will be removed and brought to the 40 West landfill with an estimated cost savings to the city of between $110,000 and $139,000 at the rate of $55 per ton. This project started a few years ago. I think they started talking about it in 2017 with an official request in 2018, July of 2018. And this was similar to what we have done in the past projects. We can use the material as cover if we mix it with other dirt on site, and it will save us roughly $33,000 in material costs in future cover material.
Are we using the tarp again or not?
We are, but we still have to put cover on daily. We cover the top of the trash, and we use the tarp to cover the working face. So the sloped area, then we pull it off, put more trash in. We still have to bring cover material out on top.
How old is that tarp?
Oh my,
20?
no, maybe 10 years old.
Does it break down on occasion?
It does. It does. We've replaced the tarps last year. Yes.
Is this used for side cover too?
Daily cover on site, yes. Yeah.
Because I remember we talked a while ago, could have been almost a year ago, about, I think you said you have to put 3 inches or 6 inches?
Well, 6 inches on the face. We had a foot of intermediate cover on tops, which is when we can come and kind of remove and then use again.
Okay.
So,
Does the city have their own landfill somewhere else?
they used to, yes, but not anymore.
So they use all city trash goes where?
Currently, it goes to Pennsylvania Waste Management Facility in Greencastle.
And they won't accept sludge?
As far as I know, they accept everything.
Well, why wouldn't they take the sludge there?
Different contract, I assume, because this is going to be done by a contractor versus like Waste Management. I don't know if Waste Management has the capability of hauling the material out of the park anywhere.
You mentioned another project. Was that the city park sludge?
Yes.
Would you supply details on that, what the waiver of fees were, and then the cubic yards and number of trucks?
Yeah, that was done in 2015. Estimated 18,000 cubic yards of material. So that's roughly 30.
Started in 2015. When did it complete? Do you know?
Yes. We started it. We started in 2015. At least the planning. Actual construction started in 2017. We were completed in April of 2017.
And what was the total tonnage that came across? Or one of the things I'm getting to was one of the documents said bypass the scales.
Right.
And no one can tell me that we have a policy that says bypass the scales. How's that happen?
You know what, I can't answer that specifically. In the past, sometimes staff, as myself, was just given direction without any background information on why it was done or anything. We're just basically doing what we're told. Overall cost for that project could have been, this is estimates based on.
This is the city park.
Right, the city park project. Could have been in the $1.5 to $1.7 million range.
What would be the normal fee? I think it says in that one document, we went from 75 to 55. We negotiated it down.
Well, we would normally charge this material almost as construction debris, at the $75 per ton
So
mark.
it looked like at one time we were going to charge because we were asking for a reduction of fee.
Yes, in my initial email to Rodney Tissue with City of Hagerstown, I said, we would normally charge at $75, but we could probably see if we could get that reduced at some point.
The total amount of fees that are estimated to be waived on that city, or the city park sludge, was how much based on how much
It
we
was about $1.4 million.
Yeah.
waived $1.4 million
Yes,
to the
sir.
city for fees, and one email said to bypass the scales.
Yes, sir.
Is that a policy? That I can't find anybody to tell me that's a policy.
No, that is not a policy.
Yeah. There was a time where solid waste was reimbursed through the commissioner's contingency for anything that went across the scales. There's a period of time where that just seemed to kind of be hit or miss. We kind of started getting back toward that over the last couple of years, but,
The way I got, go ahead, Corey.
Was the city of Hagerstown, were they a paying customer during the time that the city park was done?
2015, yeah, as far as trash removal?
Yeah, because it says,
Well, I think 2013, they pulled a contract.
Yeah,
didn't they?
I mean, Waste Management, they've been for at least the last 8 years.
Yeah, it was 2013. At the same year, the school board pulled their contract. We lost about $1 million of revenue across the scales, which was devastating to that.
Right.
So two points here.
Okay.
You said the RFR or whatever this claims that 33,000 possibly savings. That's about 25%. So we still, at 25%, I had 1.7 million, would still only be $400,000 what we could use. And did we use all that sludge they brought up?
No, we could have started using it once it dried out, but they started talking about this project right after they finished the city park project. So it wouldn't have made sense for us to just start, because we were going to excavate this material and just use the dirt that was underneath it and just kind of naturally mix it as we excavated it.
Was there a calculation that you used to get to the 33,000 for Pangborn and to the?
For the quantities?
Yeah, how did?
Well, the city park project was based on what we actually brought in. Okay, that 18,000 cubic yards was their estimate. The 1,500, 1,200 cubic yards is their estimate for this project. But just to finish your question, instead of going through the expense of building another area to house us in, because we had to build a bermed area to make sure all the liquid stayed where it was until it dried out, we just decided not to use the material right away in anticipation of this project. We didn't think it was going to be 5 years later, but.
I'm a little confused. The city is not our normal customer.
No.
And we gave 1.4 to 1.7 million for sludge, and now a proposed 125 or 39 whatever million free.
Yeah, they
have 1,000 free.
They do bring us some trash on a regular basis, but it's just their residential curbside pickup that does not come to 40 West.
I got you.
Well, one of the things I'm concerned about, and I'm not assigning any blame, but a waiver of 1.4 million should have came before the commissioners for a vote.
Yes, sir. We both agree.
And I'm not assigning blame, accusations. It's just alarming, that big of a discount. And then in the one email, it said bypass the scales on some of this stuff, and there's no policy. So that's why I wanted this brought forth today for transparency. The public, whether we get chewed out or not, or whatever, we're saying that something happened today before the commissioners. And now we're here to vote on the Pangborn sludge. And the question comes up is, they haven't been our customer since 2013. We want to be good colleagues and partners with them, but how do we justify waiving fees when they're not a regular customer and they have another landfill that they take to? And that's not making charges or allegations against our friends at the city. It's just a question that the citizens would want to know why we would make that decision.
One point I want to point out that this is a enterprise fund and it needs to be self-sustaining.
Yes.
And giving a $1.some-odd million savings, where I know in the first year that I was here, it was not a self-sustaining fund. This previous year we were, barely, but we were.
Right.
But $1.4 million is definitely good. Another $100,000 on the self-sustaining fund, because if we're not self-sustaining, I know things are picking up, but if we're not self-sustaining, then that's general taxpayer money going into there, where giving somebody a discount. So maybe I would feel a little bit different about this if they were a continually paying customer, that I have no problem giving somebody a discount if they're willing to, work with us, but.
Another problem is we have millions of dollars worth of equipment up there to replace. We need 2 on-site mechanics to work on equipment in the middle of the day when it breaks down. And I think you'll see the landfill people, employees feel they've been slighted or ignored on the request of things that they've had to deal with not having the necessary funds. So to take that hit was money that could have been used to replace equipment and employees.
You know, I'll address the elephant in the room. I want to work with all the municipalities. I mean, I want to work with them all. I'm a Hagerstown boy. I grew up there. But they just voted not long ago to withhold $406,000 from us for dispatch. I'm willing to talk about it. But if we rendered services, we should be paid. Now it's like now they're coming and wanting freebies. I don't know. Is it me? Or does that make any sense to anybody in here? I mean, weigh in, guys. I mean, that just.
I've already spoken my piece.
No, I'm not doing it.
Now that, not defending anybody, but they did proceed with this project with the assumption that it was already approved
without a
to dump the
commissioner's
material
vote.
without any cost. So I don't
Without-
know if this jeopardizes their project or not, whether it matters to you or not, but I just wanted to throw it out
Yeah,
there.
I understand that. How deep are they into this thing with whoever's going to do this?
Bids have already been received, and like I said, they're ready to start
They already
construction
have.
within the next couple of weeks.
They're gonna start in August.
Yeah.
So everything's, all their planning and everything.
How did that, did I miss something?
No, and the company that they take their trash to, up in
Waste Management.
Pennsylvania, Waste Management, why can't they use the sludge?
Good question.
Probably.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If I was,
They need it. If we need it, they need it.
They're getting the
That's what I'm saying. If I was
650,000 revenue.
I was receiving their majority of their trash, I'd be much more willing to give them a discount because we're receiving that and that's helping us out. If I were them at the same point, now I'm not, but if I was them, I'd go to the people that were paying first, except for the fact that we gave them $1.4 million discount before, so.
We didn't. Somebody did, but we didn't.
Yeah, what never voted on, Terry? No.
No, we've checked the records, there's no vote.
Well, we'll get into that later.
Well, we have the minutes from
Yeah, the
September 25th.
attached to the ARF, the prior county administrator briefly mentioned it in his county administrator.
And I'm not
comments.
assigning any blame or putting names out right now, but that type of waiver should have came in front of us and the other commissioners are pointed.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
We can either vote to approve or deny, or we could let this go in limbo with discussion with the city. So,
Right now, I'm not voting for it.
right, is that a motion?
I'm voting not to do it right now.
Make
Do
that,
you want to let it go, or do you want to, because I'll be fine making a motion to disapprove the.
go ahead, make the motion.
And I'd be fine seconding it.
Make the motion officially.
Make the motion to deny the request for the judging for Pangmore Park.
Is there a second? Any further discussion? All in favor to deny, say aye. Aye. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, commissioners.
Next, I think we need a vote to go into closed session for reasons stated. Soon as
I'll second it.
session, aye, every 4-0, thank you.